How you going, folks? Hope you're well. Despite the fact the world's mad and terrorism is back again, I hope you're all right. You know, the COVID era, the Rona, whatever you call it, there's two good things to come out of that, because obviously it was a horrendous time in many ways for many people, most people actually. But there were two good things. One was there was no traffic on the roads, so you go wherever you wanted, you didn't have to sit in a traffic jam, you could always park. And the other was that Rona, well, it cured the flu, but it cured terrorism, didn't it? Because of course, if you're a complete nutcase and you want to go and blow yourself up in a shopping centre or shoot up a party or whatever, you don't want to get a cold, do you? So you stay at home for a bit. You make sure you wash your hands and stay clear of granny. You do all that, you follow the rules, don't you? Because that's what you do if you're a nutcase. Well, Rona's gone and so terrorism is back. So we've had loads and loads of instances of it. Of course, the big one in Australia at the weekend. And already, you know, whether you believe it's legit, whether you believe it's a false flag, whether you believe it was allowed to happen by the intelligence agencies, whether you believe that another government carried out, whatever, it doesn't really matter, because the end result is the same, which is governments the world over pushing to curb free speech. And that's exactly what happened. After the blood's not even dry on these poor folks that have been murdered. And already everyone the world over, whether it be the United Kingdom, Europe, Australia, Israel, US, they're all coming out wanting curbing on free speech and more policing of anti-Semitism and hate and all this kind of stuff and dangerous speech. And you're like, well, yeah, dangerous to who though? Do you know what I mean? And what is hate speech as well? Like, who defines it? That's the point. It's like anti-Semitism. Who defines it? It expands so much that it actually doesn't really mean anything anymore, like any of these terms. So of course, you know, they've all come out saying, yeah, you know, curb free speech. And you think to yourself, isn't it amazing? Like, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's a terrorist attack, doesn't matter what it is, the answer from the establishment is always shut up. It's always what it is, isn't it? Less freedom, shut up. Same with climate change, isn't it? Shouldn't be allowed to question climate change. The science is settled. Shush. That's all they say. The answer to everything is shush. And so now I'm seeing as well, for years, this vilification of Russia, this creation of Russia as this enemy that we need to be terrified of, because of course fear is great in terms of getting people to comply. But it's not worked with Russia, you see. I don't know if you've noticed that, ladies and gentlemen. It hasn't worked. You know, with Islamic terrorism, it worked. People were terrified of it. You know, I'm old enough to remember when it didn't exist. It was the IRA. That's how old I am, in the 80s. But people still fear Islamic terrorism, as they feared the IRA and all that kind of stuff in the 80s. The whole Russia thing's not really worked. You got a few Ukraine flagging biotypes, but even they've sort of skulked off, haven't they? As they've realised that Zelensky is a complete crook. So it's not worked. That concerns me. So all the leaders, NATO leaders, you've had the head of NATO, Rutte, who used to be the leader of the Netherlands. You've had UK members of parliament, the UK military, have all come out in recent days and weeks saying how basically we need to be prepared. We need to be prepared for our sons and daughters to go to war against Russia, that they're a real threat and that our sons and daughters may have to go through, we need to be prepared for them to go through what our grandparents went through in World War II. And then a couple of days ago, you get the new chief of British intelligence comes out, pushing it again even more, saying that the Russians are aggressive and that, you know, we need to be wary and basically they're on a war footing. And you're like, well, for one, you're the granddaughter of a Nazi collaborator who used to be in the Russian army and then collaborated, joined with the Nazis and rounded up and killed Jewish people and Russian partisans. I don't know if you should be the head of British intelligence, if I'm honest. I mean, I'm just putting, like, do you know what I mean? I'm just putting it out there. I'm not sure she should be the head. Because what I see there is, I know what you're thinking. Well, you know, you can't, you know, she's not her grandfather. And no, she's not. Of course she's not. And that's fine. You know, you shouldn't necessarily be judged in that way. But her granddad clearly hated the Russians because in Ukraine, he turned and became a Nazi collaborator, as I say, and rounded up Jews and Russian partisans in Ukraine. So for then his granddaughter to be in charge of British intelligence, who is pushing for war with Russia because of what's going on in Ukraine. It feels a little bit too close to home. But this is where I'm concerned. Because on the face of it, I'd go, good, they're pushing all this propaganda, no one's buying it. No one wants to go to war with Russia. And the reason they keep telling us that Russia is such a threat and that we're at war with Russia is because it's not immediately obvious. Because we're not. And Putin's not invading, is he? And that's not to say I'm a big Putin fan. He's another World Economic Forum young global leader. He's the bad cop to NATO good cop in the pantomime. I get it, right? So before people come at me with the Russian asset stuff, it's not what I'm saying. But I also don't want to go to war with Russia. Don't want to go to war with anyone. Especially someone who isn't invading. And as I've made the point before, if Putin really did want to invade, he'd just put his soldiers in a freaking dinghy in Calais, wouldn't he? Do you know what I mean? Because we don't protect our borders anyway. So if he wanted to invade, he would have. They'd be in the Holiday Inn now with a free mobile phone. However, this is all about programming, predictive programming for us. So is there an attack coming? Because I said this today when I was filming an episode of Trending, and I came out and I was in the office and I'm chatting away to Charlotte, who's my producer, on a couple of my shows on Iconic, and she said to me, you know, do you think this? And I went, do you know what's funny is I've literally just said exactly the same thing. We're being prepared with false flag season. All these terrorist attacks are happening. At the same time, we're being told that Russia is a threat and is preparing to attack, and we need to be on a war footing, and we need to be prepared to lose our sons and daughters. No thanks, mate. And you're like, could they commit a terror attack and blame it on the Russians? Absolutely they could. And do you know what that would do? Of course it would create fear and it would create some justification, and some people would buy it and go, yeah, we have to attack, we have to go to war. And then that would make sense in terms of why you've had this constant vilification of Russia and this constant telling of us and framing to us that they're ready to attack, even though there's no evidence for it whatsoever. And that's because they have to tell you what's coming so that when it comes, whether it's legit or not, you believe it, you question it less. And in what I was saying in my episode of Trending today was I was making the point that if there was a terrorist attack in the UK, say, you know, some gas was released in the tube, or you know, a bomb went off at a football match, whatever, you name it, something horrendous happened, and then all the intelligence agencies came out and the Prime Minister went onto the news and he said, yeah, you know, we've got some evidence that it was Tonga. You'd go, what are you talking about? Tonga? But if you said Russia, how many people would go, they said it was coming? They told us there was an imminent attack, that Putin was preparing something, and suddenly people believe it. Doesn't make it true. Doesn't mean it wasn't done in-house in order to create the fear and create the support for some military intervention and whatever. Do you know what I mean? And so, without meaning to be a fearmonger, and especially not before Christmas, would it shock you, ladies and gentlemen, if that's what happened? And so if we do see something happen in the next coming weeks, which I think, I'll be honest, like, again, would you be shocked if there weren't more terrorist attacks and stuff? I wouldn't be shocked at all. So if it did happen in the coming weeks, you know, whether it be on Christmas shoppers in Oxford Street or whatever, something horrendous, and suddenly they came out and said, look, it was Russia, or it was a Russian cell, or it was terrorists who were sponsored by Russia. Do you know what I mean? Would that surprise you? Wouldn't surprise me. Would you buy it? I wouldn't. But would the masses? I hope not. I really hope not.
Thank you very much for watching and subscribing to my YouTube channel. If you'd like to take a look at all the other things that I do, the content like weekly shows and documentaries that I create, please check out my Linktree link in the description below.